What if I told you that the biggest obstacle in your life isn't your past, your circumstances, or even the people around you? It's you. What if every time you've hesitated, failed, or felt stuck, it wasn't bad luck, it was self-sabotage? The hardest truth we avoid is this: the mountain standing in our way is us. And until we learn to master it, we'll keep climbing the same slope over and over again.
Hello, everyone. Hi, all.
Welcome to Book Podcast Zone. I'm Emma.
And I'm John. And John, you're right. It's powerful stuff. We've got some really well-structured sources here, all centered around Brianna Wiest's framework on transformation and achieving self-mastery.
Yeah, it's quite a journey laid out.
It really is. And for anyone listening, if you ever feel like you're just stuck, running into the same walls again and again, maybe in your job, relationships, even just personal habits, well, this deep dive is definitely for you.
Absolutely. Our mission today really is to walk you through the 7, let's call them essential stages of transformation that this framework outlines. We're aiming to go deeper than just a surface summary. We really want to pull out the mechanics behind it all, the how and the why of overcoming self-sabotage. Think of this as maybe a shortcut to understanding how to turn that, that inner critic or saboteur into self-mastery.
Exactly. We wanted to deliver speed, clarity, but also depth. The goal is to kind of synthesize the real practical wisdom in these chapters, move past just the theory and get to those aha moments.
Yeah, the actionable insights.
Right, the stuff that offers immediate, applicable knowledge.
Yeah.
So we're structuring this as a focused 7-part journey. It's about carefully dismantling that psychological mountain, the one you might not even realize you built yourself.
Okay, let's get into it. Let's start right there with that tough truth. Why do we even build these mountains in the first place? Let's unpack Chapter 1. So Chapter 1 hits you with it straight away. Radical responsibility, the mountain. It's you. It reflects your own internal landscape. But like you said, the framework gives us this crucial reframe right off the bat. Self-sabotage isn't presented as some kind of moral failing or character flaw. It's described as a hidden shield.
Yeah, that concept of the hidden shield is so important. It's basically saying these behaviors are sophisticated defense mechanisms, often built completely subconsciously.
Right, built to protect us.
Exactly, to protect us from deeper fears, often really overwhelming fears that are usually rooted in, past hurts or traumas.
And analyzing how that shield gets constructed is fascinating, isn't it? The things we typically label as self-sabotage, like procrastination or making impulsive choices, maybe isolating ourselves.
Yeah, all that stuff.
At their core, according to this framework, they're actually maladaptive coping mechanisms. They're designed, weirdly, to keep us feeling small, maybe, but safe.
Safe in the familiar, yeah. Because they often stem from past experiences where, failure or maybe putting ourselves out there led to some really genuine, quite crushing emotional pain.
Right.
And the subconscious basically learns its lesson. Never again. Let's not risk that feeling again. So it builds the shield.
And that distinction the material makes between the immediate behavior, the thing we see, like the quick fix, and the deeper need, is absolutely essential to grasp.
Totally.
So if someone listening struggles with, say, chronic overspending,
right,
the quick fix is obvious, right? It's the temporary buzz you get from buying something new.
Yeah, the retail therapy hit.
Exactly. But the underlying unmet emotional need, it's almost never really about the stuff you bought. It could be a need for security, maybe, or a feeling of control in a life that feels chaotic. Or maybe it's trying to compensate for feeling, inadequate somehow.
Precisely. And if you only address the symptom, the quick fix, like, okay, I'll just budget harder, but you don't look at that root need for control or security or validation, then the subconscious protector, that shield mechanism, it just gets creative. It finds a new quick fix. Maybe it shifts to emotional eating or picking arguments or something else entirely.
So the shield stays up.
The shield stays up. It successfully protects you from feeling that original vulnerability, that core fear. But the cost is huge, isn't it? It effectively blocks you from achieving anything that requires genuine exposure or taking a real risk.
It keeps you stuck, looping in this kind of holding pattern of avoidance.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, a holding pattern. And that's where you see things like getting really close to a breakthrough and then suddenly manufacturing some kind of conflict or crisis.
Oh, yeah. Like the example often used, the writer who's poured their heart into a book, they're right about to send it off, and bam, they start a massive, totally unnecessary fight with their partner.
Exactly. Because subconsciously experiencing that familiar, predictable pain of relationship drama feels less terrifying than the vast, unknown, potentially devastating pain of public rejection or failure of their life's work.
Wow. It prefers the known misery.
It prefers the known misery, which leads to that concept of the low moment, right? The framework talks about this moment of reckoning.
That's a turning point.
Yeah, it's often when the pain of staying in that predictable misery, that holding pattern, finally becomes greater than the fear or psychological discomfort of actually facing the deeper issue and committing to rebuild. It's that moment of like true commitment. Okay, I can't do this anymore.
And this internal battle, this whole dynamic, it feels like it's massively amplified in our modern context, especially here in the U.S. Think about social media.
Absolutely. Social media is like a constant, relentless comparison engine, isn't it? Take professional platforms like LinkedIn, or even just scrolling through Instagram. You open the app and you're just instantly bombarded with these perfectly curated success stories. You know, the rapid promotions, the flawless family photos, the triumphant business launches.
Right, the highlight reel.
The highlight reel, exactly. And if you're already carrying some deep, maybe old fear of inadequacy, perhaps from childhood, or past career stumble or whatever, seeing that constant stream of perceived perfection, it just reinforces the need for that self-sabotaging shield.
Right.
It makes it feel even more necessary.
It gives your subconscious ammunition, doesn't it? It's like it whispers, see, look at them. If you really try, you'll just fall short compared to that. Better stay safe over here where expectations are manageable and failure isn't really possible because you're not actually risking anything significant.
Precisely. It becomes an external validator for that internal fear. So let's take a practical U.S. example.
Yeah.
Maybe you're a mid-career professional, you have an idea for a major new project, maybe even starting your own thing, but that hidden shield kicks in, whispering, ooh, that's way too risky. Look at your peers on LinkedIn. They're already VPs or CMOs. You're behind. Don't expose yourself like that.
Right. Stick to the safe path.
Stick to the safe path. And that shield, it has successfully protected you from potential public criticism or failure, but the cost. It's kept your contribution, your potential, maybe your fulfillment, small and stagnant. It's the ultimate trade-off the subconscious makes. Perceived security in exchange for actual growth.
So the big takeaway from this first chapter really is acceptance. Accepting that you built the mountain. It's not just bad luck. It's not external forces entirely. It's a kind of internal blueprint you've designed, probably without realizing it. And because you built it, only you have the power, the agency, to start dismantling that shield piece by piece.
It really demands an immediate, quite radical shift, doesn't it? Moving away from blaming external circumstances or other people and turning the focus inward to analyze your own patterns.
It's a tough first step, but essential.
Absolutely fundamental.
Okay, lots to think about there. If you're finding this helpful, please do like, subscribe, and share for more updates. We'll continue to the next chapter right after this.
All right, so building directly on that idea of the hidden shield, Chapter 2 introduces this really profound, almost counterintuitive reframe. It basically says, self-sabotage, thought of as a character flaw, it doesn't actually exist.
Okay, that sounds challenging. If it's not self-sabotage, what is it?
We're encouraged to view these behaviors instead as the subconscious protector doing its job perfectly. And its job, its prime directive, is to keep us safe in familiar territory.
Familiar territory, even if that territory is, well, miserable.
Even if it's miserable. This taps into a really fundamental psychological bias. Our brains, particularly the older parts, often prefer predictable unhappiness over terrifying uncertainty.
That needs unpacking. Why on earth would the brain prefer misery? It seems illogical.
Well, think about it from a neurological survival perspective. Our amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, is wired to prioritize known conditions. When we try something genuinely new, especially something that challenges our identity or pushes us way out of our comfort zone, the brain registers intense uncertainty. And uncertainty is cognitively expensive. It takes a lot of mental energy to navigate. And from an evolutionary standpoint, it was potentially dangerous. Unknown territory could mean predators or no resources.
Okay, so sticking with the bad job or the draining relationship, it's safe because the brain already knows the landscape of pain involved. It can kind of budget for it.
Exactly. It has a detailed map of that particular suffering. It knows how much energy it needs to allocate to cope with that specific situation. But the moment you start seriously pursuing a truly meaningful, perhaps high stakes desire, a goal that might require you to change who you are.
Yeah.
The subconscious often perceives that as an existential threat.
Yeah.
Because that new path, it's uncharted, it's unknown, even if the familiar territory is objectively worse. It's known.
So the protector generates resistance. Is that where things like procrastination or perfectionism come in?
That's precisely it. It generates resistance, maybe as chronic procrastination, or crippling perfectionism where nothing's ever good enough to release, or sudden spikes of anxiety, all designed to pull you back to the psychological safety, however uncomfortable, of the known baseline.
Wow. So this changes how you talk to yourself about it, doesn't it? If I normally label myself a failure or a lazy procrastinator, I'm basically just adding shame onto what is essentially a protective behavior.
Exactly. You're fighting yourself. But if you can reframe it, say you're intensely perfectionistic about launching a new business idea. Instead of, I'm such a perfectionist I'll never launch, you try thinking, okay, my subconscious protector is really trying hard to prevent me from being judged as incompetent, maybe because of a past failure.
Okay. The emotional dynamic shifts completely.
It does. It moves from fighting against a perceived flaw, which usually just makes it stronger, to understanding the intention behind the behavior, even if the behavior itself is problematic.
So we need to start identifying these specific patterns, right? The ones that stem from these buried emotions or unaddressed desires, like the book mentions, clinging to easily achievable goals.
Yes, that's a classic one. Instead of pursuing the truly meaningful, maybe higher-risk desires that could lead to incredible growth or fulfillment, you stick with the safe, incremental wins.
Why? To avoid the potential devastation of failure.
Pretty much. The protector ensures you never invest too much of your emotional capital, your sense of self, into something that, if it were to fail, would leave you feeling absolutely crushed. So you take the easily obtainable promotion within the company, maybe, instead of risking everything to launch that high-stakes startup you dream about.
Which leads us right into what Wiest calls the big emotional shift. Moving away from fighting or suppressing negative feelings.
Which, let's be honest, rarely works long-term.
Right. And moving towards actively validating them.
Yes, validation. And this is often misunderstood. Validation doesn't mean agreeing with the behavior. It's not saying, oh, it's totally fine to procrastinate on this crucial project.
Okay, so what does it mean?
It means recognizing and acknowledging the underlying fear or need that's driving the behavior. It's like saying to yourself, okay, I see that you, my protector part, are really scared of failing in front of my colleagues here. And you know what? That fear feels valid. Maybe based on that time I got embarrassed in that meeting years ago.
Okay. You're acknowledging the feeling's origin or its perceived legitimacy from the protector's viewpoint.
Exactly. And the psychological relief that comes from just labeling the pattern as protection trying to help rather than personal failure can be immense. It kind of suspends the internal civil war for a moment.
And in that pause.
In that pause, you can create a little space to ask a different question. Okay, protector, I hear you. Thank you for trying to keep me safe.
Yeah.
Now, what does my true self, my core self, actually want in this situation?
This whole idea of validation and understanding the protector, it resonates strongly with some current trends we see, especially in the U.S. workplace, like the whole quiet quitting phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely. It's a perfect example. From a traditional management perspective, it's often misinterpreted simply as laziness or lack of engagement or entitlement.
Yeah, that's the common narrative.
But if you look at it through this framework, it starts to look like a potentially profound act of subconscious or even conscious protection and realignment.
How so?
Well, think about the intense culture of overwork, the hustle culture that's been dominant in many U.S. professional fields. For many, that represented a kind of predictable unhappiness. People were burning out, sacrificing their mental health, their personal lives, often chasing external validation status, money.
A familiar but often toxic pattern.
Exactly. So, quiet quitting, in many cases, could be seen as the subconscious or conscious self saying, nope, I am rejecting this familiar, harmful territory. The cost is too high. I'm setting boundaries around my energy and time because my deeper values are screaming for peace, sustainability, maybe just not being completely exhausted all the time.
So they aren't necessarily trying to fail at their jobs, but they are trying to redraw the lines, trying to realign their daily energy expenditure with deeper personal values like health or family. They're trying to escape that harmful, familiar territory.
Precisely. They're essentially rejecting the old scripts that said success means total self-sacrifice and tentatively trying to pursue a new alignment. And that new alignment might feel terrifying. Will I get fired? Will I fall behind? but it feels necessary for survival or well-being.
That's a really different way to look at it.
It is. So the essential takeaway here, for you listening, is to stop trying to just silence that internal guard dog, that protector. Stop fighting it directly. Start trying to understand why it's barking so loudly. What threat, real or maybe just perceived from the past, is it desperately trying to protect you from?
Because only when you understand its motive can you begin to gently reassure it, maybe retrain it, and choose a different path.
Exactly. You work with the protector, not against it.
Makes sense. Okay, another crucial step. Remember, if you appreciate this breakdown, please like, subscribe, and share. It helps others find this too. We'll move into how triggers guide us next. Okay, so if the subconscious is acting as this protector, trying to keep us safe and familiar, albeit sometimes painful territory, Chapter 3 gives us essentially the map to understand what it's protecting us from. And that map is our triggers.
Right. This is where we need to make a fundamental shift in how we view our emotional reactions. You know, those instant flashes of frustration or envy, or maybe getting defensive.
Yeah, the stuff we usually just try to ignore or push down.
Exactly. Yeah. The framework argues we need to stop seeing those as just annoying interruptions to our day and start recognizing them as really powerful tools, like signposts, pointing directly to hidden truths about ourselves and, crucially, our unmet needs.
They're giving us directions in real time, basically.
That's the idea. So this is where we really get into the practical mechanics of, let's call it emotional decoding. Society generally teaches us to manage our emotions mostly by suppressing them, right? Or maybe distracting ourselves. Just think positive or don't dwell on it.
Pretty common advice.
But this framework demands pretty much the opposite. It says we need to lean into those uncomfortable feelings gently, curiously, and learn to translate them into actionable insights. What are they trying to tell us?
Okay, let's make that concrete. Can we break down a couple of common emotional triggers? Like, the book mentions chronic worry.
Chronic worry, yeah. A really common one. If you find yourself worrying incessantly about a particular outcome, maybe a presentation or a health issue or finances, just telling yourself stop worrying is almost completely useless, isn't it?
Yeah, never worked for me.
Right. So the deeper question, the decoding question is, what underlying belief system is this worry actually trying to protect? Often, if you dig down, it's protecting an entrenched belief like, I must be in control of everything in my environment to guarantee a safe outcome. Or maybe, if something bad happens, it will be catastrophic and I won't cope.
Okay. So the worry isn't the root problem, it's a symptom of that deeper belief that feels threatened.
Precisely. Or let's take another really corrosive one. Resentment.
Ooh, yeah, that one can really fester.
It really can, often quietly. And the insight here is that resentment is almost always a signal that somewhere along the line, a boundary was violated or a core need went unmet.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Let's say I constantly feel resentful towards a family member who always seems to rely on me for help, maybe borrowing money or needing favors.
The immediate trigger might feel like them asking again. But if I decode the resentment, it's probably not really about them asking. It's more likely pointing to my failure to establish and enforce a clear boundary around my time or resources. Or maybe it's pointing to my unmet need for my own efforts and support to be acknowledged or reciprocated.
Right. The resentment is a signal about my inaction or unmet need, not just their action.
Exactly. And once you decode it like that, you move out of just feeling vaguely angry or put upon, and you can start thinking strategically about shifting your own behavior. Like, okay, how can I communicate my boundaries more clearly next time? Or how can I ask for the acknowledgement I need?
So the aha moment here, the real turning point the book describes, is when you stop viewing these intense, often negative feelings as enemies you need to conquer or banish. And instead, you start seeing them as resources, as data. When you do that, you instantly start building stronger self-awareness. You're getting real-time feedback on your internal state. That analogy you used earlier about the check engine light, I think it's worth expanding on here because it's so fitting.
Go for it.
Triggers are exactly like the check engine light in your car. They flash on, often brightly, usually at the least convenient moment, right?
Story of my life.
Huh? Yeah. Now, imagine you're on a long road trip, maybe driving across the U.S., if that check engine light comes on and you just ignore it, maybe you put a piece of tape over it.
Bad idea.
Terrible idea. Because that initial, maybe small issue, a faulty sensor, low oil, whatever, if ignored, it just snowballs, doesn't it? It can lead to massive, catastrophic engine failure down the road, stranded in the middle of nowhere.
Right. big consequences from ignoring a small signal.
We have to apply that exact same logic to our internal emotional systems. Ignoring the emotional check engine light, that flash of anger, that pang of jealousy, that wave of anxiety, means you're essentially incurring massive emotional debt.
Yeah.
And eventually, that debt comes due, often in an explosive way.
And that emotional explosion, that's the core of the snowball effect we see playing out all the time, especially in high-pressure environments.
It is, and the contemporary relevance here is huge, especially when we talk about things like mindfulness in a practical sense. A lot of people, understandably, use mindfulness apps or techniques almost as a form of like emotional anesthetic.
Just to stop feeling the anxiety or stress.
Right. Which can have its place, sometimes. But true integration of mindfulness in the context of this framework means using that awareness to tune into that initial emotional spike, that trigger, before it gathers momentum and starts rolling downhill.
Okay, give us a U.S. example of that snowball.
Like, let's take the classic one.
Yeah.
Road rage and heavy city traffic.
Yeah.
Happens everywhere, right? L.A., New York, Chicago.
Definitely.
The initial trigger is often tiny. Someone cuts you off, maybe just a sudden stop causing a delay, a moment of mild frustration or annoyance.
Okay.
If you don't acknowledge and just kind of notice that initial flash, oh, okay, feeling irritated right now because I'm late. What happens?
It escalates fast.
It escalates instantly. That mild frustration snowballs into blinding anger, maybe aggressive driving, leaning on the horn, yelling. And that can lead to an accident, a confrontation, or worse, all because the initial small signal was ignored and allowed to compound.
Or think about it in the workplace. Maybe chronic frustration with a supervisor who feels, I don't know, distant or maybe micromanaging.
Yeah, another common one. If you ignore those initial signals, the little pangs of feeling controlled, or that your need for autonomy isn't being met, that frustration just builds quietly. It snowballs into resentment, maybe disengagement, maybe your performance suffers, and eventually it could lead to a major career setback, like getting passed over for promotion, or even deciding you have to quit, maybe without even fully understanding why things got so bad.
Whereas if you tuned into the initial trigger,
You could have addressed the underlying need much earlier, maybe by having a conversation about expectations, asking for clearly defined areas of independence, or seeking clarification. You address the need before the whole situation implodes.
So the map is literally being handed to you by your own feelings. They're giving you precise directions to your unmet needs or violated boundaries. The only question is, are you actually listening to the map? Or are you just getting angry at the check engine light for flashing?
Exactly. Don't try to just shut off the alarm and hope the fire burns itself out. Use the alarm to locate the fire so you can actually address it.
Powerful stuff. Okay, listen up. If this is resonating, hit that like button, subscribe, share it around. We need to build on this foundation now with emotional intelligence. That's coming up next. All right, so we've talked about recognizing self-sabotage as protection and learning to decode our triggers as guides. Now, Chapter 4 takes us to the next logical step. Actively building emotional intelligence, or EI. Wiest frames this as the absolute foundation of inner strength.
And it's crucial because this moves us beyond just self-awareness, knowing what you feel, into self-management, and also, importantly, social awareness and relationship management. Sharpening your EI doesn't just make you feel better internally. It fundamentally improves your relationships and, critically, stabilizes your ability to make good decisions, especially under pressure.
Okay, but let's be real. Building EI, changing those ingrained emotional reactions. It's hard work, isn't it? Why is it so difficult?
Well, the foundational challenge here is wrestling with the brain's massive inherent preference for the status quo, for efficiency. Change requires conscious, deliberate effort, and our brains are naturally optimized to conserve energy, to stick with the familiar neural pathways.
The path of least resistance.
Exactly. So if we genuinely want to build a new habit, say, the habit of pausing before reacting defensively when we feel criticized, we have to understand the mechanics of habit change. And the key, according to this framework and lots of neuroscience, is small, steady adjustments, not huge, drastic, unsustainable leaps.
Okay, I like small, steady adjustments. Can we make that more practical? What does that actually look like in daily life? Let's say my ingrained bad habit is overthinking every single social interaction after it happens. Ruminating.
Okay, common one. So the drastic leap approach would be to just command yourself, stop overthinking forever, starting now, which is
Likely to fail by lunchtime.
pretty much.
Yeah.
So a small, steady adjustment might be implementing a specific small rule. For example, Okay, the moment I finish a conversation or leave a social event, I'm allowed exactly 1 minute, set a timer if you need to process or review it in my head. After that 1 minute, I must verbally say to myself, processing complete, and then physically get up and do something else, change my environment.
Ah, okay. It's specific, it's time-bound, and it involves a physical action to break the loop.
Right, that small, specific interruption, practiced consistently, starts to build new cognitive muscle. You're inserting a deliberate pause, a conscious choice point, into that default overthinking loop. You're gently teaching the brain a new script.
So we apply that same principle to other negative cognitive habits, like maybe jumping to negative conclusions based on incomplete information, or catastrophizing, assuming the worst possible outcome.
Precisely. It's about consistently introducing that pause,
Yeah.
that moment of awareness where you notice the old pattern starting, uh-oh, here I go, assuming my bot hates my report because she didn't reply in 5 minutes, and consciously choose a different, more constructive internal response. Okay, pause. What are other possible reasons? Maybe she's busy. I'll follow up later if needed.
And this ties into the emotional pivot the book talks about, especially with anxiety. Viewing challenges not just as threats that trigger anxiety,
But
as opportunities. Opportunities to practice these new skills, to develop resilience, to actually get, as the book says, tougher.
and this is where we need to clarify the difference between being emotionally tough and being emotionally cold or shut down, right?
Yeah.
They're not the same thing at all. Not at all. That's a critical distinction. Emotional toughness, true resilience, isn't about not feeling the fear or the disappointment or the stress. It's about feeling all of that and still choosing a constructive, reasoned response anyway. It's emotional competence.
So it means you can take a hit, metaphorically speaking, process the emotional data and the factual data of the challenge, acknowledge the feeling, and then quickly pivot to a problem-solving or adaptive state rather than getting stuck in the reaction.
Exactly. You're not denying the emotion. You're managing it. And that capability, that high EI, is absolutely vital for navigating the complexities of modern interactions, especially, again, thinking about the U.S. context, where so much communication happens digitally now. Remote work, social media, email.
Yeah, where tone and body language are often missing, leading to so much potential misunderstanding.
Huge potential. Think about getting an email or a Slack message that feels ambiguous, or maybe even a little critical. Without high EI, our default is often to project our own insecurities or worse fears onto those words. We assume negative intent, or maybe there was none.
Right. We fill in the blanks with negativity.
We do. But building EI helps us foster more authentic connections, even across distances, because it encourages us to pause that assumption-making process. It prompts us to ask clarifying questions instead. Hey, just wanted to check my understanding of your feedback here, rather than defaulting to defensive assumptions or passive-aggressive silence.
That makes sense. And this skill, this EI, it becomes absolutely critical when navigating those really complex, often highly polarized social situations we encounter more and more.
Oh, definitely. Think about navigating discussions during intense U.S. political seasons, or maybe tense family gatherings during the holidays where certain topics are bound to come up.
Yeah, walking on eggshells sometimes.
Right. Now, a person lacking well-developed EI might react very defensively when a sensitive topic arises. Their triggers get hit, Chapter 3. They don't validate the other person's perspective, even if they disagree, and they might escalate the conflict, maybe leading to shouting matches or storming off, potentially damaging the relationship.
Okay, so how does a person with high EI handle it differently?
The person with high EI still feels the trigger, that internal alarm bell, but they notice it, Chapter 3. They might take a breath, validate their own feeling, feeling anxious right now. They might even try to understand or validate the emotional reality of the other person, even while disagreeing with their point. I can see this issue makes you feel strongly. And then, crucially, they respond with clear, calm boundaries, managing their own response. Maybe saying something like, I understand this is important to you, but I feel myself getting upset, so I need to step away from this particular discussion right now. Or, I hear your concern, and I see it differently. Maybe we can talk about something else.
So they shift from a purely threat-based reaction to more of a self-aware, boundary-setting, maybe even mediation-based response, protecting both the relationship as possible and their own internal state.
Exactly. They're navigating, not just reacting. So the big takeaway here is profound. Toughness isn't about being emotionally cold or numb. It's about being emotionally smart. It's the ability to feel everything, acknowledge everything, without being paralyzed or controlled by any of it.
That's the foundation we really need, isn't it? That emotional smartness. Because the next step involves dealing with baggage we might be carrying.
Precisely. We need that resilience to face the past.
Okay, really crucial skills here. If this deep dive is helping you build your own toolkit, please like, subscribe, and share it. Let's talk about releasing the past next.
All right, moving forward in our journey. Chapter 5 tackles something unavoidable for pretty much everyone, the baggage of the past. Wiest calls the process of dealing with it the gentle art of moving forward. I like that phrasing, gentle art. We do. It implies it's a skill, something requiring care, not force. And the core emphasis here is understanding that holding on to old hurts, old regrets, old guilt, it actively, consciously or not, blocks our path forward.
And the critical realization, the reframe again, is that the past isn't some fixed concrete block you're forced to drag behind you like a ball and chain. It's more like a weight you are actively choosing to keep picking up and carrying in this present moment and the next and the next.
That choice point is key. And the framework argues that gradual release, gently setting down that weight, is what opens the doors to a different future.
So how do we practice this gentle art? What are the steps involved?
Well, this stage really focuses on the simple but not always easy practices needed for processing those lingering emotions,
Yeah.
moving away from just endlessly ruminating on what went wrong,
Yeah, getting stuck in the loop.
and shifting towards more constructive reflection. A big part of this involves identifying the specific impossible standards that we've often internalized, maybe from childhood, from past relationships, from societal pressures.
Those standards can be so insidious, can't they? They're the quiet voice whispering, unless you achieve absolute perfection in this area, you're fundamentally flawed, or you should have known better, or real success means X, Y, and Z, and you don't have it.
Exactly. And if your past includes significant setbacks, maybe a major career failure, a painful breakup, a financial loss, those internalized impossible standards can create this chronic low-grade or sometimes high-grade
Yeah.
internal guilt or shame that just consumes so much mental and emotional energy.
It weighs you down.
It absolutely weighs you down. And Wiest argues that it's only by consciously identifying and then deliberately shedding those external, often punitive, unrealistic standards that you can actually create space for fresh experiences.
That idea of creating space is powerful. Can you elaborate on that?
Think of your mental and emotional landscape like a closet. If it's completely stuffed to the brim with the heavy, dusty garments of old guilt, lingering resentment from past arguments, shame about mistakes made years ago, there is literally no room left. No psychological hangars available for new joy, new perspectives, new opportunities, or even the necessary vulnerability required for new relationships or risks. Clearing that space through reflection and release isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about acknowledging the lessons learned, feeling the feelings maybe you didn't let yourself feel then, and then consciously setting the emotional burden of it down.
Okay. And what's the emotional breakthrough point in this chapter?
The framework describes it as achieving a state of quiet acceptance. This isn't necessarily about fireworks or sudden epiphanies. It's often quieter. It involves genuine self-forgiveness.
Self-forgiveness. That's a tough one for many people.
It really is. And it's important to clarify, self-forgiveness doesn't mean excusing past poor choices or pretending harm wasn't done. It's more about recognizing, with compassion, that you operated back then with the limited tools, the limited knowledge, the limited emotional maturity, and perhaps the unhealed wounds that you possessed at that time.
Right. It's acknowledging, given who I was and what I knew then, I did the best I could, even if that best wasn't great by today's standards.
Exactly. It's releasing yourself from the futile task of judging your past self by your present self standards. And the feeling that comes with that acceptance, even if it arrives gradually, is often described as palpable, like stepping lighter, feeling genuinely freer from the crushing weight of yesterday's regrets or hurts.
Now let's connect this to the real world again. How does this releasing the past concept play out in, say, current U.S. economic contexts? Because those often generate a lot of stress and sometimes shame.
Oh, absolutely. The relevance is acute there. Think about the intense, often crippling pressure many Americans feel regarding things like student loan debt, or the sheer overwhelm and perhaps regret associated with the current housing market, maybe feeling priced out or having bought at the wrong time.
Yeah, those are huge stressors.
Huge. And many individuals carry profound guilt or shame tied to past financial or career choices that contributed to their current situation. Maybe choosing the wrong college major that led to debt, but not high income. Maybe not starting to save or invest earlier, maybe accepting a lower salary years ago that now feels like a huge mistake.
And they feel that guilt almost physically, right? Like a constant burden.
Exactly. And that financial guilt, that career regret, it functions just like the hidden shield we talked about back in Chapter 1. It paralyzes you. It prevents you from taking calculated risks or pursuing new opportunities now because you're so busy mentally punishing yourself for perceived past mistakes.
You're stuck looking backward in anger or regret, so you can't see the path forward clearly.
Precisely. You're too focused on the debt already incurred or the opportunity already missed to even visualize a different, potentially better future. So the framework strongly encourages applying this gentle art to releasing that specific financial or career guilt by challenging the narrative. It asks the individual to try viewing economic volatility or personal financial setbacks, not as definitive proof of their incompetence or failure, but perhaps as a clearing. Maybe an unexpected, initially painful clearing that actually creates space for better things ahead, even if they aren't visible yet.
So releasing the shame allows you to regain the emotional bandwidth, the cognitive capacity needed to actually find a new direction, whether that's exploring new career paths, learning new financial strategies, or whatever is needed.
That's the core idea. By releasing the weight of the past judgment, you free up your present energy to build a different future. The lesson is so simple conceptually, yet often incredibly hard to practice consistently. The past only feels heavy if you choose to keep carrying its emotional weight into your present moment.
It's time to consciously, gently set that heavy backpack down, maybe for good.
Maybe for good, or maybe you have to set it down again tomorrow. It's a practice.
Right. And ongoing gentle art. Okay, this is vital work. If you're getting value, help us reach others by liking, subscribing, and sharing. Next up, actively building the future you want. Okay, so we've acknowledged the mountain is you, understood the protector, learned to read the triggers, started building emotional intelligence, and begun the gentle art of releasing the past. Now, with that space cleared, Chapter 6 pivots us firmly towards proactive construction, towards building a new future. And the core tool here is the power of visualization.
And it's really important to understand what kind of visualization we're talking about here. This isn't just like passive daydreaming or wishful thinking.
Right, not just sitting around hoping good things happen.
No. It's presented as an active, focused technique. It's about consciously connecting with a future version of yourself, a stronger, wiser self who has already navigated the challenges you currently face. And it involves actively visualizing not only the desired outcome, but also visualizing the release of old traumas, old limitations, letting them dissolve into the ether, as the book puts it, while also, crucially, mentally rehearsing the steps needed to get there.
So it's both letting go and building up simultaneously in your mind.
Exactly. And this requires a really strategic shifting of focus. Remember how we talked about avoiding triggers or fears? This stage demands the opposite. You actually face the fears head on, but you do it within the visualization.
How does that help?
By facing the fear repeatedly in your mind, in a controlled way, and visualizing yourself handling it successfully, you demonstrate to your subconscious protector that the perceived threat is actually manageable. You start to reinstate a genuine, felt sense of safety, even while contemplating the challenging thing. And then critically, your mental focus shifts almost entirely away from dwelling on past pain and locks onto purposeful actions needed for the future.
Okay, explain that difference, dwelling on past pain versus purposeful action.
Sure. Let's say you spend an hour replaying a past argument or a past failure in your head, feeling all the old shame and anger. That's dwelling. It reinforces the negative pathways. Now, let's say you spend an hour vividly visualizing the successful completion of your next big project, seeing the steps, feeling the confidence, anticipating the positive outcome, maybe even mentally rehearsing how you'll handle potential obstacles. That's purposeful action, fueled by visualization.
And this visualization, it's not just psychological woo, is it? There's a neurological basis for why this works.
Absolutely. When understood through a modern neuroscience lens, visualization is essentially neural rehearsal. By repeatedly, vividly imagining yourself performing an action or embodying a certain state, being confident, being calm, executing a difficult task, you are literally activating and strengthening the neural pathways required for that behavior in real life.
So you're pre-paving the road in your brain.
You're pre-paving the road. You're essentially pre-programming success, making the desired state or action feel more familiar and less threatening to your brain when you actually encounter the real-life situation. It reduces the brain's natural resistance to the new behavior.
Wow, okay. And what's the emotional turning point described in this chapter?
It's described as the empowering handover. It's this conscious moment or series of moments where you deliberately stop giving primary power to the wounded, limited, self-sabotaging self that might have been running the show based on past experiences.
And instead,
Instead, you consciously choose to grant executive power, the driver's seat, to your future potential, to that visualized, stronger, wiser self who has already overcome these hurdles in your mind.
and that shift does what?
That shift sparks hope, genuine, grounded hope. And that hope, according to the framework, is the most powerful, sustainable motivator for making concrete, deliberate changes in your actual behavior. If you can truly feel and internalize the image of yourself successfully making that tough phone call, or finishing that daunting project, or setting that difficult boundary, the actual doing of it becomes significantly less daunting.
The mental rehearsal builds the confidence needed for the actual performance.
Precisely. And this principle, this power of visualization for future building, feels intensely relevant to navigating modern professional life, doesn't it? Especially given how unpredictable careers can feel in the U.S. today, with technology changing everything so fast and economic shifts happening constantly.
Yeah, things feel way less stable than maybe they used to.
Definitely. Think specifically about those notorious boom and bust cycles we see repeatedly in tech hubs like Silicon Valley or Austin or Seattle, or just the rapid, sometimes jarring upheaval caused by AI integration across almost every industry right now. Career paths aren't these neat linear ladders anymore for many people. They demand constant adaptation, learning, pivoting.
Okay, so how does visualization help in that kind of uncertain environment?
Well, imagine a major sector you work in experiences a downturn, or new technology suddenly makes your primary job function potentially obsolete. If you're stuck operating solely from the past, identifying only with your previous role,
Yeah.
clinging to how things used to be,
You panic, you feel lost.
you panic, you feel lost, you might freeze. That's the subconscious protector trying to keep you safe by resisting the scary new reality.
Mm.
But if you've been practicing visualization, if you've cultivated an internal image of your adaptable, resourceful, resilient future self, then this chapter becomes a powerful call to action, not a reason for despair. You don't just default to the familiar, often painful path of bitterness. It's not fair. Or fear, I'm doomed.
You shift into proactive mode.
Yes. You proactively use that visualized future self as your guide. You start thinking, okay, the landscape changed. What skills do I have that are transferable? What do I need to learn now? What does my visualized future self who can navigate this do next? You might commit to retraining or networking in a new field, or maybe even launching that side hustle you'd visualized earlier. You start drawing a new map based on your potential and your visualized capabilities, not just on the limitations inherited from your past job title.
So the mountain, the challenge might still be really tough. But by mentally rehearsing reaching the summit, by embodying that future self, you unlock the internal resources you need for the actual climb.
Beautifully put. And that leads directly to the takeaway for this chapter, which is just incredibly empowering. You are not trapped by the map you inherited from your past or your circumstances. You possess the power, through focused vision and consistent mental rehearsal, to draw a completely new one,
Your future self is essentially waiting for you to step into that vision.
waiting for you to catch up to the potential you've already visualized.
Okay, really inspiring stuff there. Building the future. If this resonates, let us know, like, subscribe, share. We're heading into the final chapter now. Culmination, self-mastery. And here we are at the final stage outlined in the sources, chapter 7. This is presented as the culmination of the entire transformation arc we've been tracing, moving from self-sabotage all the way to self-mastery.
And self-mastery, as defined here, isn't about achieving some kind of static perfection or eliminating emotions altogether. It's described more as a dynamic state where your emotions are effectively controlled, meaning understood, managed, and directed, but without resorting to burying them or denying them.
So it's not suppression, it's skillful navigation.
Exactly. It's about building this deep, unbreakable trust in ourselves. Trust that we can handle whatever internal states or external situations arise without falling apart or reverting back to those old self-sabotaging patterns. It's like becoming the calm, capable conductor of your own internal orchestra, rather than being jerked around by whichever instrument happens to be playing loudest at the moment.
I like that metaphor, the conductor. So how do we achieve and, maybe more importantly, sustain this state of self-mastery? What are the key pillars?
Well, the framework emphasizes building some new core pillars for how you design your life. The first one is about goals, shifting away from setting goals primarily rooted in seeking external validation, chasing titles, wealth, approval from others,
Yeah, the usual suspects.
and instead focusing on setting goals that are deeply rooted in cultivating inner peace, personal growth, and congruence with your core values. So maybe the goal shifts from achieve the highest status title in my field to find or create daily work that feels meaningful and aligns with my values regardless of the title. It's an internal shift in motivation.
Okay, goals aligned with inner peace. What's the next pillar?
The cultivation of genuine mental toughness. But again, crucially, this isn't about just being stubborn or rigidly insisting you're right. It's presented as toughness achieved through humility.
Humility. How does that build toughness?
By fostering the ability to learn from mistakes without letting them define you. Viewing setbacks not as evidence of your fundamental inadequacy, but as valuable data points for improvement. Okay, that didn't work as planned. What can I learn? How can I adjust my approach? This kind of toughness also requires meticulous, detailed planning for your goals, but planning that realistically accounts for potential obstacles and, frankly, human fallibility. Mastery isn't accidental. It's consciously engineered and re-engineered as needed.
Right. It requires realistic planning and the humility to adapt. And is there a third pillar?
Yes, and it might surprise some people, especially those caught up in intense self-improvement drives. The third pillar explicitly stressed is joy. Yes, the importance of consciously savoring life's simple joys, finding pleasure and presence in everyday moments. The framework warns that mastery isn't just about peak performance or relentless optimization. It has to encompass a high quality of life, overall well-being.
That's a really important point. If your pursuit of mastery makes you miserable, constantly stressed, isolated, or perpetually feeling like you're not doing enough,
Then you haven't really achieved mastery, have you? You've likely just traded one form of self-sabotage, maybe overt procrastination, for another, perhaps more socially acceptable form, like workaholism or obsessive perfectionism, often wrapped up in the language of productivity or discipline. True mastery includes contentment and joy.
Okay, so goals rooted in peace, toughness through humility and planning, and savoring joy. What's the final emotional shift involved in reaching this culmination?
It's described as embracing full, but importantly, non-judgmental responsibility for your entire life journey, the good, the bad, the messy. This means finally accepting that discomfort isn't just an occasional unpleasant visitor. It's an inevitable, even necessary part of growth.
So you stop fighting the discomfort.
You stop fighting it. In fact, you learn to turn that feeling of discomfort, that feeling of being stretched or challenged, into a trusted guide. It's no longer seen as an obstacle to be avoided at all costs, but as a signal that you're likely on the edge of your comfort zone, which is exactly where growth and ongoing mastery happen. You almost start to welcome that feeling of healthy strain because you know it means you're expanding your capacity.
Wow, turning discomfort into a trusted guide. That's a huge shift from where we started with the hidden shield trying to avoid discomfort entirely.
It's the full circle, isn't it? And this whole concept of integrated, balanced self-mastery feels particularly relevant, maybe even like a necessary antidote, when you contrast it with some of the pervasive pressures we see in modern U.S. wellness and productivity culture.
How so? What's the contrast?
Well, that mainstream culture often relentlessly promotes constant optimization. Biohacking everything, maximizing every minute, maintaining intense levels of busyness, projecting an image of effortless outward perfection.
Yeah, the always crushing it vibe.
Exactly. And paradoxically, pursuing that can be utterly exhausting, completely unsustainable, and often leads people right back into burnout, which is, ironically, a profound form of self-sabotage fueled by unrealistic external pressures.
So how does the book's message offer a corrective to that?
It suggests that true strength, genuine self-mastery, doesn't come from that frantic external optimization. It comes from cultivating balance, from building an internalized, enduring sense of peace and self-trust. It means you've essentially built an inner fortress, grounded in your values, where you understand your emotional landscape and can manage your responses effectively.
And that inner groundedness prepares you better for the real world.
Far better. Because it makes the individual ready for whatever external chaos inevitably comes next, whether that's economic uncertainty, social upheaval, unexpected personal crises. You're not optimized for some imaginary perfect world where everything goes according to plan. You are mastered, resilient, and balanced for the actual imperfect, unpredictable world we live in.
So the final takeaway isn't that the mountain disappears.
No, the challenges, The metaphorical mountains will likely always be there in some form.
But now you have the internal self-trust, the emotional intelligence, the tools, the perspective to climb it. Maybe not always effortlessly, maybe sometimes you stumble, but you climb it effectively without being fundamentally destabilized by it.
You are equipped, you are resilient, and you are ready, finally, to reliably guide yourself forward.
An incredible journey mapped out. If this final stage of mastery resonates, or if any part of this journey did, please support the channel. Like, subscribe, and share. We're going to wrap up now with a recap and a final thought. #tag 90X. Outro and final thought.
So we've really covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? We've traced this entire transformative path laid out in the source material, starting from that initial difficult recognition of the hidden shield in Chapter 1.
Seeing self-sabotage not as a flaw, but protection.
Exactly. Then reframing it more deeply in Chapter 2 is that subconscious protector just trying to keep us safe in familiar territory. From there, we learned in Chapter 3 how to use our emotional triggers, not as annoyances, but as invaluable guides, pointing towards our unmet needs.
Yeah, decoding the signals.
Right. Which then led us to Chapter 4, focusing on actively building the foundation of resilience through emotional intelligence, managing ourselves and understanding others better.
Which gave us the strength then, in Chapter 5, to finally start practicing that gentle art of releasing the heavy weight of the past.
Creating that essential space so that finally in Chapter 6, we could pivot to proactively envisioning and starting to build a new, more purposeful future, using visualization as a key tool.
And all of that, step by step, culminates in Chapter 7, achieving that state of sustained, balanced self-mastery, where we trust ourselves to navigate life's inevitable ups and downs.
Quite a comprehensive roadmap.
It really is. And hopefully, for you listening, this deep dive has given you a clear sense of that critical psychological path. The path to hopefully stop climbing that same frustrating slope over and over and over again. This isn't about a quick one-time fix, is it? It's really about establishing a fundamentally new relationship with yourself, one that's ongoing, trusting, and deeply honest.
Beautifully said. And that very framework, that journey towards conscious mastery, leads us naturally to our final provocative thought for you to mull over as you integrate these ideas.
Okay, let's hear it.
If self-mastery isn't a static destination, but truly an ongoing journey, when you will continue to evolve, grow, and change throughout your life. And if your conscious self today successfully understands and integrates the lessons from your current subconscious protector, what then? What is the role of periodic, maybe even intentional, deconstruction in the future?
Deconstruction, meaning?
Meaning, if you achieve a certain level of mastery and success today, based on dismantling this layer of self-sabotage, isn't it possible that your future, more successful, more evolved self might inadvertently create new, perhaps more subtle, subconscious protectors or limiting beliefs based on that new level of success?
Like success itself could create new fears, fear of losing it maybe, or a new comfort zone you become reluctant to leave.
Precisely. So the question becomes, does true lifelong mastery actually require the consistent, humble willingness to recognize and dismantle the new limitations of subconscious protectors that our own growth and success might inevitably create down the line? Is mastery less about reaching a final state and more about committing to perpetual self-awareness and gentle deconstruction over and over again?
Wow. Okay, that adds a whole other layer. The idea that even mastery requires a vigilance and a willingness to keep peeling the onion, so to speak. That's definitely something to chew on. A powerful thought to end on.
Hopefully provocative in a good way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your sources with us and for joining us on this really insightful deep dive into transformation and self-mastery. We genuinely hope this framework serves you well on your own journey.
It's been a pleasure exploring it. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.